Everyone, I'm Nate Houghton, co-founder of Incendium. Welcome to the Growth Accelerator, here with Peter from Lazy AI. Welcome, Peter. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, Nate. Nice to meet you all.
Peter's a unique one in that we are Peter's customer and Peter's also our customer, which is one that we don't always get all the time, but excited to chat with you. We were just chatting, and maybe we can kind of close the conversation with this about how and if we can replace me with a better interviewer that we make with AI. I will say that there is an option on StreamYard to enhance my appearance, which I have selected. So this is better than I actually look already. We could probably just replace me entirely wholesale.
I appreciate that you didn't actually say that's an option for me. Now,
I thought that for comparison, it would be really helpful here. I don't know. I never tell the guests. It's how I keep myself ahead. But thanks for joining us, Peter. Really appreciate it. Could you give anyone who might not be familiar the quick rundown on maybe the 1.5 minute version on Lazy AI, where you all came from, how you got to this company? Because I know you have a lot of experience that led up to it as well.
Sure. I'm Peter. Hello. I'm actually from Hungary originally, but I spent a lot of my life living in the US. I went to UCLA, studied math, then went to work at Google for a long time, and I worked on in particular. And then I worked on monetizing search. And I joined Google in this time of basically the beginning of an AI first strategy for Google. And so I got to work with models, which is the background of ChatGPT, where it all came from very, very on when it was just a nascent project. And then I left Google to do startups, and I kind of believed that AI is the future at that point. And what Lazy is and where we arrived is basically a tool that lets you build complex business applications with prompts without needing to hire engineers or knowing how to code. And we do this not for what you would typically today call vibe coding, if you will, but more for serious business purposes. And I'm sure we'll touch on how you guys are using it. And people will find out, but it's not a coincidence that Incendium is using Lazy. That's exactly what Lazy is meant for. So
yeah, and that's actually a good transition. I think the natural question somebody might have is, give me an example. So no need to bury the lead. We might as well do the example first, which Incendium obviously is a growth studio company. We do a lot of different growth work. One of the main things that we spend a lot of time on now is a tool called Sonar, which many people looking at this or this might know. Sonar was built using Lazy. We couldn't have engineers on our team. We were able to use Lazy AI to build Sonar. So I think this professional services firm helping with marketing that needs to productize their offering is a really nice example. There are others of those as well. What are some other spaces maybe that you're curious about, or even current customers and how they've used Lazy so far that you're really excited about?
Yeah, so a lot of people use us for basically internal tool purposes. Yeah, so the typical use cases, I have to take data from one place. I have to in some way process it and nicely display it with charts and so forth to an internal team of users who can then do stuff with it. Yeah, so now I'll give some examples. I'm most familiar with the examples that we use in our company. We built a lot of Lazy on Lazy, and I think that's a better way of doing it than me inventing cases from customers that there are a lot of as well. But these are really close to heart, so I'm happy to chat about them. So it goes from simple things like we use Stripe, for example, for people buying subscriptions for Lazy. And Stripe is a very intricate platform. And one of the things that can happen in Stripe is you sometimes can end up with customers with multiple customers with the same email.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's something simple as do we have duplicates in our customer base in Stripe is not something that's easy to solve. And you might want to create a dashboard where you can have a tab that says, are there any duplicates, and show them to me, if anything, so that a customer service agent can go in and dedupe them. Yeah. That's a simple use case. Now, on the same vertical of Stripe, we go way beyond it. So if today you sign up for Lazy, which, by the way, the first thing you will see is our corporate website and landing page, which was also built on Lazy. Right. At some point, you will hit the paywall where we integrate Stripe via Lazy. You will pay. And then if you now want to manage your account, say you want to switch plans, you want to upgrade from one plan or the other to the other, or let's say we charge for hosting fees. So you're hosting your application on Lazy and you want to see how much you've paid for to date for those the hosting. All of that is also done by a Lazy app. And what that allowed us to do as a SaaS startup is basically take a lot of the non-core engineering work, where stuff like this has been developed a million times by people already. It doesn't require sophisticated Google level engineers to figure out how to build upgrade flows. This is more of a marketing task, if you will.
Sure.
Right? And so we've taken all of these marketing things and put them in the hands of our customer service, our marketing, and our product teams, rather than bugging the engineers with it.
Right. And there's a couple ways to tell this story, I think, right? And this is where we can get a little bit futuristic and talk about where some of this goes. But you have the very simple case of like, we are a type of company A, we're a marketing company, we're an engineering company, we have these core competencies, but we need to do all of these other things as well. So you as an engineering company need to get paid. That's important for you. Us, a marketing company, more and more like we to automate tasks that we don't have engineers to create. And I think, one of the things that's probably worth getting into, and I don't know the degree to which you have a strong thesis on this, but as this evolves and you can imagine more and more companies that are servicing other types of clients using Lazy, do you think, like, what does this look like in 5 years or 15 years? Like what are the jobs that retain, and how do we continue to interact with a tool like Lazy that in a way that adds value for our customers?
Yeah, I think ultimately what we're seeing as a trend is the death of SaaS. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people who use software tools out there, they're probably aware that they are paying the 100% price for the 20% of the features that they're actually using in it.
Yeah.
But they're also paying an extra price of customization. They can't actually achieve exactly what they want. They need to sort of work around the limitations of the tools, connect them to some other tools, which then ends up growing their bill and so forth. And I think most companies are frustrated with this ultimately. And as the cost of engineering is going down due to tools such as Lazy, more and more companies will opt to build custom solutions for things like CRMs, for things like connections from one tool to the other, for core programs, for bots that they might need to communicate, for customer service, or for marketing purposes. And that's the trend that we're living in, that they're going to opt out of buying yet another tool that they need to learn and hire someone to know how to do anyway, and instead opt in to have generalist people who know how to use tools like Lazy to build them whatever they want really, really quickly.
And I think actually just from the perspective of a service provider, and I think I've maybe said this on the Growth Accelerator and certainly to some people watching this before, when I graduated from college, like I made the decision to go into sales because I couldn't build, in 2011. I didn't have the capacity. It's actually kind of an interesting thought experiment to imagine me graduating now and just getting lazy or lazy AI and being able to use that. But I think that's shaped the way that the organization has evolved, or we're providing services for people. And the reason that I bring this up is that the sales tech or the marketing tech space is one of those where there are dozens, literally maybe hundreds in some cases, of tools that all have some vertical integration, some horizontal integration. And one of the services that we think we provide is packaging the 3 or 4 best of these in one place for people, and then putting a around it, which you can build with Lazy. I just think for companies, these services companies that are non-core to other businesses are tremendous. And I feel like if we brainstorm for an hour, there's some different things we can do. So I'm certainly an evangelist in terms of like, if you have a company that's doing recruiting or doing marketing or doing, you could even convince me like outsourced, website design, whatever it is, there's probably something not just on the back end for yourself to make your own life easier, but there's something client facing that you can put together to make yourself closer to a software company and kind of turn yourself into SaaS, which I think is interesting. And I think the implications of this probably have more like layered ripple effects than we can think about. Like, what does this mean for what people are doing in this economy? What does this mean for how companies are built? And yeah, I would imagine within the next 5 to 10 years, a lot of companies can just build their own whatever it is they need. like you mentioned.
Yeah, and look, I think what you said is spot on in the sense that what you're communicating, in my opinion, for your business is, look, if we have a product, right, and it can be really a package of other more basic, everything in software is right. You never build everything from ground up anyway, you know. We use Anthropic, OpenAI for AI. We use Google Cloud for deployment. And we use a million other pieces of software to make.
And every CRM is just a pretty spreadsheet at the end of the day anyway, right? It's like that's all.
Yeah, that's right. But from a perception of your customers, when there is a product where there is something tangible, and that can be a virtual product, of course, in the case of our services or your services, there's a band to associate that. There's to associate that with. Your customers will feel like you're that much more advanced, like your processes are that much more automated, that they have, you have an edge, and therefore they have an edge being your customers, right?
Yeah.
And that's what everybody is going for ultimately. Revenue and retention are always the things that matter, and one way to achieve that is to modernize your business. I've had things where I've worked with marketing agencies, for example, that run things incredibly manually, you know, and what I see is a gigantic mess out of it. For myself, on the reporting side, I can't understand what the hell is going on. And for them operationally, they basically cannot scale their business to customers with these non-automated processes. And tools like Lazy come in handy, not just because you can automate some stuff, but as you said, you can actually build some client-facing automation as well that will make your customers feel like you're really at the edge of technology.
And I think that's one very important point that helps with your growth. The other part of my pitch that I think has been really useful is that if you are a services business and you do not have any sort of underlying product, your ability to do good customer service is the table stakes. People pay you for that. And that means that you have to grind it out every day and be thinking of ideas and be sending them ideas and be proactive and be really good at customer service just to keep the client. When you have something that's product-like, and then you also layer on top of it really good customer service, you tend to get extra credit for that. They tend to put like a culture and a vibe around that. So the pitch that I make, I think when I talk about this to other service providers is like, it's such that you're having fun again serving customers, which is what you wanted to do in the first place, instead of being in a position where you're like, oh, crap, I got to do this. I have to do this meeting. I have to do 1 or 2 meetings a week with every customer because I need to show them what I'm doing. And the only way to do that is to fill up my calendar, as opposed to having some sort of productized offering. So I think that's like the vision of where I think this all gets us in terms of like what the future is and what people can do, and in happy version of like where AI leads us. I think there's a dystopian story that some people like to tell where it's like, oh, people had jobs, right, doing this stuff, and I think you and I clearly believe is something to the effect, well, no, but now they get to do the things that are human. Like now they get to do the things that are more fun and more enjoyable, and I think give them much more fulfillment in their work, which I think is interesting in the services business.
Yeah, I mean, on the philosophical side, of course, jobs aren't disappearing.
Yeah,
jobs are going to be created as a result of this. It's always been like this in every single cycle. But at the same time, it's true that jobs will be disappearing. It's just that there will be new ones to appear. And sometimes we don't analyze the new ones. We only know what we've just recently lost, right?
We can't analyze the new ones. We have a hard time seeing the future, right? So it's a block, I think, that we have. But I completely agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah. On the other side, just to add again, I mean, I think the whole point is people send me spreadsheets of stuff all the time, you know? And like the likelihood of me opening a spreadsheet these days is quite low as a CEO of a company.
Yeah.
Partly because I know I'm going to be seeing some raw data stuff, and I'm not really interested in that. If you send me a link that's a link to an app and I have to log in, the likelihood of me doing that is actually quite high, right? So just in that interaction, there's a mega opportunity for any services business to convert their customer into a loyal customer. Right?
Sure. And that makes sense. There's a part of this that I would couch under courage in some ways too, because I a lot of what Incendium as a company went through in 2024 as a period of transition that at times was incredibly terrifying, was very, very scary. I think on the other side of that, the forcing function was it got us to a place where we were thinking about things in a better manner. I was the biggest, I think if I was giving you advice on your growth, I think actually what you really kind of need to incite within a lot of these services founders is like, you can do this, you can get through this. And like, this is this better version of this on the other side. Because it is, it is very freeing to all of a sudden see the number of clients you have as again, as a service provider CEO, to see the number of clients you have going up and not have this sinking feeling of like, oh no, like, how am I ever going to do this? Like how, because it's not you anymore. And I think there's liberating about that. But it does take a couple months of rockiness. And I would bet that's the biggest kind of status quo issue from a growth perspective. We were talking about like your growth and like reaching out to people. It's less that they don't see the vision. It's more that they're scared. People do get scared, I think, in a lot of cases, but yeah. I think the last thing I wanted to kind of get into a little bit, if it's okay, is just think through. I know you and I have talked about this privately, but for a company like yours that can do so many different things, what are some of the ways that you've been able to listen to your customer set and find like the right types of clients that you identify more of? Like how is that you're finding new customers or thinking about what a good new customer might look like?
Yeah, for us, ultimately, we've gone through a really rapid phase of growth over the past couple of months, maybe a year, which was by some influencers coming in and actually posting some videos about us, which was quite funny and interesting to us. It has never happened to any of my prior businesses, and to build like enterprise companies and nobody really cares about the stuff that I do. And here, this guy named Tech Friend made about us, and there was like 5 million people that saw it, and suddenly our website just absolutely got hammered with traffic, and our service got hammered with traffic, And it's really funny the types of things people want to do. What we find is actually the space has like various different niches in it. It's not a single space of everybody will be now an engineer writing stuff with prompts.
Right.
It's much more nuanced. There are people who want to do fun things. These are like games and visual things and stuff for their family and for their children. And they call that the hobbyist sector. Yeah. There's people who want to do specifically landing pages, which is interesting because you would have thought that landing pages is like a solved space,
right?
With Wix and Squarespace. I don't know. There's a million of these, right?
Yeah.
And yet there was like a landing page revolution that happened this past year with prompts. People really hate clicking buttons in tools, it turns out. And the last part is what we're doing, which is like basically internal tools and client-facing tools that can process data and show charts of things and stuff like that, right? Yeah. So these are distinct from doing a landing page very, very clearly. They're more about processes inside of companies, communication with your customers, and things like that, right? Yeah. So those are we really, really like the space, particularly because we get really good quality of customers there, right? As a business, and I don't need to explain this to someone who works in the services space, a lot of your retention and revenue will be driven by the quality of the selection of customers that you do, right? If you go out and you get a customer who is a complete startup without any funding and any financial history, just like the banks predict, most of those will churn for the reason that they simply will cease to exist, right? Whereas when you deal with real businesses with real existing processes that they're trying to automate and actual real revenue, the probability that they will go away is much lower, but also the probability that they will build stuff that they don't need is much lower because they simply do not have time to do stuff that is irrelevant, right? So that's why we really enjoy this place of serious companies with serious tasks, and that's why those are the ones that we want to help and really deliver the promise on.
Well, interesting, just anecdote that I thought of as you're saying that, which I've noticed, is that certainly you're like your core and who you can service. One of the advantages of using Lazy for us is that it's changed our model such that we actually have expanded that a little bit. So like a good customer, and yes, what is still very much true, where there are some that are going to fail, and obviously we want to stay away from the ones that are going to fail. but we can charge a price that actually opens up our customer set so much more widely. And I would say this to any service provider too, that actually you have your list of good customers is much longer, which is kind of an interesting thing that we've seen well. But yeah, that's cool to hear. And I think you know, a lot of it seems really obvious to me. I was not the one within my organization who discovered Lazy, right? It was someone who worked for us. And I think that then it kind of spread like wildfire internally, right? And I think there is something to be said for that. I think that there's definitely a bit of a transition from, you know, some influencer got attention and those people work at companies and like they told it there versus, you know, transitioning into some sort of an outbound structure. But I think what you've done a really good job of, in my opinion, is paid attention to the different types of users who have shown up and kind of identified the common themes among the ones you like, which then makes it possible to, you know, to them in an outbound fashion, which we're excited to get working on here in the next couple of weeks as well. So any closing thoughts, anything else to say? I think for us, we're obviously really excited to keep working together, but yeah, would love to hear if you, and even just where people can find you, how they can get started, what they should do.
Yeah, look, I mean, you go to getlazy.ai. By the way, the name of the company, if anyone's curious, it comes from a Bill Gates quote. Or Bill Gates said, if you want to get something done, hire a lazy person. They will figure out how to do it in the easiest way.
Yeah.
And I think that's ultimately the driver here. Like fear can be a factor. Yeah, we live in times of tremendous change. Technology is moving all the time. Mm-hmm. It's not even that you should be afraid that you will miss out on something, but I think dedicating a small time to learning new things is always really good, and an open mind. And hopefully all companies have someone on their staff like you did with your guys, curious and going out and learning about things, because sometimes you stumble on innovative tools and technologies like ours that can actually create tremendous shift and change inside an organization. So that's the upside of it. So don't be afraid. Try a bunch of things. We live in an incredibly cool time where lots of new things pop up, and of course a bunch of it is snake oil and it will never work. But even if 10% of it works out, we're going to live in a 2 times, 3 times more effective than we live in today.
Great. Thanks, Peter. Awesome. Good stuff. Thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.
Bye-bye.